Bruchim haboim, welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Mem Beis Amud Beis, 3 lines from the top, the new Gemara. A Gemara brings the Mishnah where there's a machloikis between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanakama said that a person who takes off a pan or a pot from the flame and it's still yadso lettuce bowl, so you cannot put tavlin, you cannot put spices on that pan or in that pot because a kli rishon is mevashel. However, if you put the contents of the pot or the pan onto a ka'ara, a bowl, a plate, or a serving bowl, so then that is a kli sheni, and that's mutter. Comes along Rabbi Yehuda and he argues, and he says you can put the tavlin on so long as it doesn't have choymet and seer, either vinegar or juices from the fish. The question is, what is this ambiguous statement of Rabbi Yehuda? We know that he's arguing, but how is he arguing? Ask the Gemara, Iboilahu. Rabbi Yehuda areisha koi ulakula. Is Rabbi Yehuda arguing on the reisha, where the Tanakama said, again, that there's a kli rishon that you can't put tavlin on, to which Rabbi Yehuda is making, and he said you could put tavlin even on a kli rishon, so long as it's not choymetz v'tzir. Or dilma aseifa koi ulechumra. Or perhaps Rabbi Yehuda is arguing on the seifa, when it says you can put on a kli sheni. On that he's being machmir, says you can only put on a kli sheni so long as it doesn't have tzir and choymetz. But if it has tzir or choymetz, it will be mevashel, even though it's a kli sheni. Toshma, the Gemara brings a raya from the following brisa, the Tanya. Rabbi Yehuda oimer lekol ilfasin hu noisein, lekol hakederois roitochois hu noisein, chutz midavar sheyesh boi choymetz v'tzir. Here clearly the brisa indicates that Rabbi Yehuda says he's arguing on the reisha and is being mekil, and he says even on a kli rishon you can go ahead and put tavlin, so long as it doesn't have choymes and seer, which cause it to mevashel. Otherwise, he's making, when it comes to a kli rishon, that he's saying that it does, you can't put tavlin and it won't be considered to be mevashel. Sov Rav Yosef lemeimar. Rav Yosef thought to say, melach harehu ketavlin. Salt. What is the status of salt? He says salt is like a tavlin. The bekli rishon bashlo ubekli sheni lo vashlo. In a kli rishon, it cooks, just like tavshil does, as the Chachamim taught us. So too, salt also cooks on a kli rishon, but a kli sheni does not cook. Not the tavshil and not the melach. Omar le Abaye Tani Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia taught melach einat ketavlin. Salt is not like tavlin. It's not like spices. The bekli sheni nami boshlo, because melach is kali habishul, and it even cooks in a kli sheni. Upligad Rav Nachman, and this argues on Rav Nachman. Dom Rav Nachman, tzricha milcha bishula kibistra de tura. He says that the salt requires cooking just like an ox's meat, and just like an ox's meat cannot be cooked in a kli rishon that's off the flame, it must be on the flame. So too, he says, when it comes to salt, the only way to cook salt is when it's even on the flame alone. But if it's in a kli rishon that's off the flame, then it does not cook the melach. V'ike da'ameh, there's another version of this. So Rav Yosef lemeimar, Rav Yosef thought to say, melach harehu ketavlin. Salt is like spices. The bekli rishon boshla, bekli sheni lo boshla. Just like spices are cooked in a kli rishon, again even off the flame, so too melach, salt, is cooked in a kli rishon off the flame. And just like tavlin is not cooked in a kli sheni, so too melach is not cooked in a kli sheni. That's the same as the first version, but now it changes. Omar le Abaye Tani Rabbi Chia, melach eina ketavlin. Melach is not like a tavlin. The bekli rishon nami loy vashlo, because he says melach is like shei habishul, not kale habishul, koshe habishul. That melach, salt, does not even cook in a kli rishon. Unlike tavlin, they'll cook on a kli rishon. So if you have a kli rishon that's off the fire, then melach does not cook on it. V'hainu dom Rav Nachman, and this is like Rav Nachman, tzricha milsa bishula, milcha bishula kebisra de Torah. So too, just like the ox's meat needs to be cooked on the fire itself, in the kli rishon on the fire, so too salt, in order to cook salt, it requires to be cooked on the fire in the kli rishon. But if it was in a kli rishon off the fire, then it would not be considered to be something that could be cooked. So it comes out that we learn from Tosfos and Daf Mem Amud Beis that Tosfos taught us that the distinction between a kli rishon and a kli sheni are the walls, because he asked, if indeed the kli is yad soledes, but what does it make a difference if there's kli rishon or kli sheni? So he said the kli rishon, the walls maintain the heat, whereas the kli sheni, the walls dissipate, the heat dissipates, and therefore it does not cook in a kli sheni. The sages understood that there are certain things, that's the general principle, there are certain things, however, that are not included in this rule. And therefore they said that certain things do cook in a kli sheni. We are not aware of which things exactly are bizmanenu, and therefore we're machmir, and we say, according to the Ramah at least, that whatever cooks in a kli rishon can also cook in a kli sheni. However, there are three main exceptions to that rule. One of those exceptions is water, another one is salt, and the third exception is ginger that is whole, or cinnamon sticks that is not grounded. Those are things that are difficult to cook, and therefore, unless they're in a kli rishon that's on the fire, do they cook. If they're in a kli rishon, even if it's yad soledes, well, they don't cook. The Gemara now brings a Mishnah that changes the subject. Our Mishnah now begins the subject of muktzah, and it discusses how to handle an oil lamp. Says the Mishnah, a noisning kli tachas haner, a person cannot put a kli, a vessel, a kli, underneath the oil lamp, lekabel bois Hashem, in order to then receive the drippings of the shemen that come from that oil lamp. Now we're talking about putting it even before Shabbos. No, sorry, we're talking about putting it on Shabbos. Sorry, you can't put it on Shabbos. Now, why can you not move a kli and put it underneath the oil lamp just to then receive the drippings of the oil? So there are two main reasons over here. One, first of all, the oil lamp itself is muktzah. Even though oil is not in itself muktzah, but once it's designated to be used as a ner, it becomes muktzah. If it's a ner shel Shabbos, in this case, let's say it's a ner shel Shabbos, so then it's muktzah machmas mitzvah. It's set aside for the mitzvah. And even if it's not for the mitzvah, even if it's just a regular ner, also it's problematic, because once it's used as a ner, then there's a problem that a person might mechabe by taking out some of the oil. So therefore that oil is considered to be muktzah. Now, once that oil is muktzah, so therefore by putting a kli to then anticipate and to then mekabel the drippings of that oil, makes then two problems. One problem is a problem that you're moving a kli for something that is not movable, which in this case is the oil. And second problem is, it's called migmavato kli mehechona. You take a good, viable kli that you can move around on Shabbos, and now you move it in a situation where it's going to receive the oil, which is muktzah, and thereby, since once that is received, you will not be able to move the kli again. Why is that a problem? Because the Chacham said this is doime to a malacha. It's considered to be like you now are taking the kli and you're cementing it down because you cannot move the kli. It's as if you're now doime to a malacha of binyan, of boine, to that kli. Some learn the opposite. It's doime to a malacha of soiser. You now broke the kli because you cannot move it now on Shabbos. But whichever one it is, whether it's ein kli nittel b'davar elisha davar ha-nittel, or it's because of mevato kli mehechono, both reasons make it so that you cannot move the kli again on Shabbos to then be underneath a oil lamp to anticipate and to receive the drippings of that oil. The Mishnah goes on to say, Aval koife ale kli shelo tishave. I skipped. V'im nasnu mi ba'od yoim mutter. However, if you did move the kli before Shabbos, then it would be mutter to receive the drippings of this oil lamp. Now, what's the chiddush? Hare, if you moved it before Shabbos, so what would be the problem? Because over here, even though it's a viable kli, but once you put it underneath this oil lamp, it's now no longer going to be able to be moved. So a person might think, or we might think that it would be improper, it would be prohibited to move such a kli before Shabbos because you might come to move it on Shabbos. Kamash malan, it's not a problem if you move it before Shabbos and put it underneath the lamp. And you cannot have any benefit from this oil that is dripping into the kli because it is not muchan, because it's muktzah. And therefore the oil itself, since it was muktzah in the lamp from the beginning of Shabbos, we have a principle, that which is muktzah from the onset of Shabbos remains muktzah from the rest of Shabbos as well. Says the Gemara, Omar Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said the following: Afal pisha omru, even though that they said, Ein noisnin kli tachas tar negoiles lekabel beitzasa. Even though the sages said you cannot put a kli underneath the rooster, the tar negoiles, to receive the egg. That's similar to what we learned, parallel to what we saw in our Mishnah. You can't put a kli underneath the oil lamp because then you'll be moving a kli for something that cannot be moved. In this case, the egg, which is muktzah, it's a problem of noilad. When an egg is birthed on Shabbos or on Yontif, it's considered to be muktzah. However, the sages said, "Aval koifa ale kli shelo tishover," but you can take a kli and put it on top of the beitzah in order to protect it from becoming shattered, from becoming broken. Omar Rabbi, my time with Rav Chisda. Rabbi asked, what is the reason that Rav Chisda said that you could take a kli, even though you cannot move it in order to then receive the beitzah, but you could, after it's already been noilad, you can put it on top and cover it to protect it. Kisover tarnegoiles asuya lahatil beitzasa be'ashpa, because the rooster, the chicken, it normally makes its egg in an ashpa, in a trash heap, in a place that it's vulnerable. And it doesn't normally hatch its egg in a sloped place. And because the hatzala is common, hitiru, they were matir. But it's hatzala to rescue the egg that is not common, they didn't matir. So therefore, once the egg is hatched and it's in a vulnerable situation, you can go ahead and move, Rav Chisda says, a kli in order to then cover it up and protect it. Eisvei Abaye asked on Rav Chisda, on something that's not considered to be a common way of being matzil, they didn't allow you to move a kli. Vehatani, behold, it says in the Braisa, Nishbur loy chavis shel tevel berosh gagoy. If a chavis that was containing tevel inside, tevel is produce they haven't taken trumos and maisers from, which means it's also to eat, and therefore it's muktzah on Shabbos. And the chavis that contains this tevel broke. So it says, Mevi kli umeniach tachtel. You can bring another kli and put it underneath to save the tevel. So you see that this is l'chara, something that's not mitsuya. Answers the Gemara, begulfe chadeti deshchichi depaki. We're talking about a chavis that is new, and therefore it is common that would break. So therefore you could move a kli to then go ahead and then catch, to hold on to the tevel and matzil it. Eisvei asked the Gemara from another brisa, noisning kli tachas haner lekabel nitzoitzos. You can move a kli underneath the ner to then receive the sparks that fly out from the ner. Isn't that not common? Answers the Gemara, no, nitziltzos is nami shchichi. That's considered to be common as well. Eisvei asked the Gemara from another brisa, koifin ke'oro al haner shelo yoichaz bekaro. You can take a ke'oro, a plate, a bowl, and you can then cover a ner. Now you can't cover it entirely because that'll extinguish the ner, but you can cover it enough so that it will not then reach the beam and cause it to come on fire. So obviously this is not something that's a commonplace, because a person would never light a ner in a way that can cause a fire. Answers the Gemara, since it's a low type of house structure, therefore it is common that a ner could indeed cause a fire. So therefore by moving the kli, you can matzil the potential fire. Now the Gemara asks from the following Mishnah, if you have a beam that broke, that was holding up a structure, a home, it says that the kara that breaks, you can go ahead and then bring a bench or the legs of a bed, and then soimech, you can then support that beam that broke so that the structure will also be supported. So how can you do that? You're moving a kli for dosha eno nital. Answers the Gemara, B'kishure chadeti da'avidi depoki, because it's a beam that is new, it hasn't been checked well, and therefore it also often breaks. So it's considered to be something that's common. Ask the Gemara from another place, Noisnin kli tachas hadlaf b'Shabbos. You can place a kli underneath a leak on Shabbos. Now the water from the leak is muktzah. How can you do that? How can you move a kli, which is a davar hanitil, for a davar she'eno nitil, because the water, which is a leakage, that itself is not considered to be something you can move for. That's something that's considered to be muktzah. Answers the Gemara, bebote chadeti deshchichi dedalfi. We're talking about a new house, and therefore in the new house there are common leaks, and therefore that's considered to be a common place. Therefore you can go ahead and move a kli even in this situation for muktzah. So we see over here that in all these situations, like Rav Chisda taught us, in the case of the egg, when an egg was hatched, since it's something that it's a common place that you can go ahead and save it, therefore you can take a kli and cover it up, even though it's a kli shenital, for a dov she'eno nital. In a situation like this, you can be matzil it.